Thank you so much to everyone who's taking time out of their day to take part in this workshop. I'm going to pay attention to the chat pop-ups. I'm going to pull it a little closer to myself to hopefully improve the sound. Minimalism problems, we've got some echoes going on in here, I think. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm just going to take a brief moment to introduce myself. I'm Kristen Ziegler. I own Minima. We are a home and workspace organizing company based in Richmond, Virginia, but especially since COVID, we've been working with clients all across the world, which has been a really cool opportunity. We just celebrated 10 years in business last October. Prior to becoming a professional organizer, I was an architect, and I definitely have a minimalist perspective, but as many of you know who have worked with me, we never force or impose minimalism as a harsh rule. It's just sort of part of my personal belief system. I want to share an overview of the talk before we dive in, and so you guys have sort of a framework for what the subject matter is, and then I'm going to show some before and afters just to show you some, what does it look like to be a professional organizer? What is this thing that I do? And then I'll talk about paper management, which is a huge pain point for a lot of our clients, and time management, which has been a big thing I've been helping people with during COVID with Screen Share, Google Calendar, Google Drive, all of that. So I'm going to start by showing you a couple before and afters. So that's my office on the left where I'm calling in from right now. It's apparently very echoey. And that's me on the right side. This is a project we did last fall. This was a client's third floor bonus room. And, you know, as you can see, I think someone's sound is on other than mine. Just go ahead and mute yourself if you haven't already. So on the left is the before. You couldn't walk in. It was years worth of outgrown childhood, keepsake types of things, unused home decor, and we cleaned it out for her, so now she can access everything. This is a tweens, I think she's 11 or 12 closet, and we actually worked with her directly, no parents involved, and she was amazing, made all the decisions about what to keep or get rid of. And we implemented this alpha closet on the right from the Container Store to help maximize space. We just did this in November or December of 2020. This is a client's attic, and before you couldn't walk in, and after you can circulate throughout the room, and all of her holiday decor is stored nicely. So that's a sort of perspective background. We're going to be talking about workspace organizing specifically today. So first, I want to talk about location of your home office. So many of us are working from home. If you don't have a good work from home spot and you're in Richmond, I just want to plug Gather. Their co-working spaces are amazing, so check them out if you don't have the capacity in your home to do remote work. But if you do, I recommend, if you can, picking a room where you can close the door. Because that, for me, I have this second bedroom as my office, and I set the intention that I'm here to work. I'm not getting distracted by home tasks and things like that. Peaceful, quiet, nice natural light are all things to look for when you're setting up your office. I also recommend facing the doorway of the space or wherever the entrance flow is, because if you can, there's always exceptions to the rule, but it's nice to not have your back to the door. And just if you've ever studied feng shui, they talk about that as well. So my desk is facing the door to the room. And let's see, the second thing, and a lot of people talk about making the home a sanctuary, but they don't think about making the office a sanctuary. We think of an office as a place where we go to do work, and it can be stressful, and it can kind of feel hard or cold. And when I give you the tour, even though I know it's echoey and empty right now, it does feel very calm and peaceful and like a sanctuary in here. To me, what a sanctuary is looks different to each person. But some ways you can make your space a sanctuary are soft lighting. So I have this little portable lamp. It's by Menu, which is a Scandinavian company. Helps light my face during Zoom calls too, which is great. So this is just, very soft and calming. You could get an aroma diffuser to create a calm ambiance, candles, plants. I have one over there that I'll show. Some soft music playing in the background, anything to create a really calm environment for you to do your best work. And obviously decluttering is a big part of that as well, which I'm going to talk about. If you're someone who buys supplies in bulk, I see this all the time where clients are trying to store like a year's worth of supplies at their desk if you have built-in storage. What I recommend is having just what you need for the day on your desk and then storing all of your bulk or infrequent supplies somewhere nearby but out of the way. So as you can see, this is my desk, and this is actually more than I usually have because I have all of my workshop notes right now. So just helps me to focus on the task at hand to not have everything out. And I recommend putting everything back at the end of each day as well because it just helps start fresh in the morning. Let's see. And the last thing I like to talk about with general workspace tips is ergonomic seating. So you'll see when I give the office tour, I have a little footstool under my desk because I'm only 5'3". So with a standard table height, to get the proper ergonomic seating, let me show you. You want your arm to make a right angle with your desk. You don't want to be hunched or reaching or anything like that. And ideally, you want to have a good sight line with your computer. So my main computer is actually right here. And with that, I'm going to show you my office, and then we're going to dive into decluttering practices as they apply to your office space. So I'm going to unplug my laptop and give you a little tour. Okay. So we'll start at the entry. So I'm leaving the office now. So you can see this is my hallway. And you can see my desk is facing the door. So I always I used to be an architect, so I think about the design and space plan of the rooms that we organize just as much as how to declutter and create systems. I always think about what is the first thing I'm going to see when I'm entering the room, because I think that really sets the tone of the space. And when you're passing by the room in your house, it makes a big difference too. So to me, this was the best setup. I don't want to see my computer screen. I put away the footstool when, the workday is over, it folds. So I'm going to enter the office now. Normally the bunnies are in here. They're a little too loud, so they're gone. Window, desk space. And then this is that whole no office vibes, calm, serene atmosphere that I was talking about. This is my little minimalist aquarium and some artwork that is very calming to me, and a nice plant with a pot that has really soft lines. So whenever I look at those things, if I'm feeling stressed, it's kind of really calming. So I want to show the inside of this cabinet as well. This is what I was talking about with regard to storing bulk office supplies away from your desk. So this is next to my desk, but it's not right there. And then I have my printer and some pending paperwork. Just gonna go close the office door back up. Okay, so with that, I'm going to share the Minima method that we use with all of our clients. And I'm going to describe it in reference to an office space, but these ideas can be used for any space in the home. So I'm going to hold this up just to give you a point of reference. These are the 4 steps: plan, sort, minimize, and then organize. A lot of people try to start right here and get stuck. So there are a few steps before you go to the Container Store. The first step is plan. And for an office space, I recommend just getting a piece of paper, or if you like to take notes on your device, that's fine too. And write down what your vision for the space is. This is super important because it's going to guide all of your decisions going forward. So for me, my vision is as simple as possible, a beautiful, serene place to come do my best focused work and hang out with my bunnies. So let's say I was going into this process with backstock of like 100 pens and 50 different types of stationery and printer paper. With a smaller space like this, that would not be in harmony with my vision. So when you're looking at your stuff and trying to minimize and simplify, put your vision in one hand and put your stuff in the other and see which is more important, because usually you can't have both. And so for me, that's what minimalism is about. It's not about restrictions or limitations. It's about freeing up space to reach your bigger goals. So once you have your plan in mind, the next step is to sort. Step 2. For an office space, we recommend usually the floor or a desk, or pulling out some folding tables and pulling everything out. Get all of your office materials. If they're spread throughout the home or in different places in your, if you have an office, get it all out. Basically, you're hitting the reset button. And you're going to sort into zones. And zones are really important because they tell you how to group things. So examples of zones that you'd be sorting into for an office would be things that you want to have at your desk. So computer, the desk itself, maybe a notepad, stationery, writing implements, printer, paperwork, office electronics. And then I even sub-sort, like we have a thing we call macro and micro sorting on the job. And a micro sort would be within basic office supplies, like writing implements, things that cut, things that attach, and so just thinking about it like that. And so doing all of this is going to make the next step of minimizing a lot easier, because people just, honestly, they don't realize what they have until we pull it all out and show them. I've had clients say, did you bring that in here? I didn't even know I had that, or I haven't seen that in a long time. And so it really helps you start fresh and assess what you have versus what you need. So in addition to sorting zones, Zoom is asking me about if I'm playing music. I don't know if I had a sing-songy tone there for a minute. In addition to the zones for the space that you're working on, we always recommend having a donation bag at the ready, a sell and consign, a trash and recycle, a pile for your empty container store, so when we're on the job, a lot of people get really worried about, what products do I need to buy before you come? The answer is nothing, because we're usually able to repurpose the stuff that we emptied during the sort phase, at least as a temporary solution. If you want to streamline and upgrade, we can totally do that. And another technique when you're sorting, an important thing to know is you're not worried about what you're minimizing, you're just sorting. So it's just sort of like speed mode. What is this? It's a writing implement pile. Things that cut pile, paperwork pile. You're not like, do I need this yet? That's the next step. So that just really expedites it. And if you find something when you're sorting that doesn't belong to the categories that you've established for the space, there's a technique that I call shortcutting, which means just putting it outside the door and staying focused on the project at hand. Because it can be really tempting if you find, I don't know, like keepsake or clothing or decor or something in the office, and then you want to go organize it where it's going to go, and then you just have 5 different unfinished projects at the end of the day. So shortcutting is just simply placing something that doesn't belong outside the room for the time being. So you've sorted. The next step is to minimize. And I actually wrote a Minima journal post, which Monica is going to link to. Betsy says, volume changed, can't hear you. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Betsy, try turning up your, no, Jennifer says she can't. I can hear fine. You got a little quiet. Okay. Okay, I seem to be back. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, cool. I might look into like a little mic or something for the next one. But anyway, Monica's gonna link to this. This is about 12 questions that you can ask yourself during the minimizing process. Marie Kondo's Sparking Joy is a great place to start, but there are a lot of other questions that can help you minimize if the Spark Joy method isn't working for you. And for the record, I love Marie Kondo. So just a couple of those main points in the minimizing process are the fact that the sort and grouping like with like is going to reveal the natural redundancy and duplication. So that right there has set you up to minimize one step. As I mentioned, referring back to your vision, what's more important. Noting that, especially now more than ever, charities need your clutter. They need it. There's so many people like after COVID who have lost their jobs or been displaced. They don't have what they need. And they're turning to these resources. And I didn't link to this, Monica, but you can find it on my website. If you're in Richmond, my employee Alex created a post called Donations for a Good Cause. And it's a lot of local charities who are helping our underserved community here. But even if you don't live in Richmond, you probably have resources like that. Also, we love Goodwill. I know that they got a bad rap a while ago because of the CEO, but let me tell you, they help employ people who are coming out of incarceration and get them back into the workforce. They employ people who have learning disabilities. They recycle like everything. And I've seen this in action at their Central Midlothian facility here in Richmond. So they are open, they are taking donations. They take broken electronics and will recycle them with a partnership they have with Dell. They will take your stained and torn clothing, so don't throw it out, they'll recycle it. The only things they don't take are like home improvement, like paint and chemicals, which you should give to Habitat. And things like, they're weird about clothes hangers, but I try to sneak them in anyway sometimes if I like put them in a set. And they will not take anything you can put a child into for recall reasons, but otherwise they'll take just about anything. The other thing when you're minimizing to consider is, could you sell it to make some money? This is literally how I survived the 2008 recession and how I became like a full-on minimalist, was looking around and putting a dollar value over everything. The thing here is to say, what is my time worth versus, yes, diversity is awesome. I think they're on my list. Thank you, Caroline. We love them. And they will take clothes hangers too, actually. So, and mattresses last time I checked. So with selling things, you have to ask yourself, what is my time worth? What is the item worth that I'm selling, and decide if it's worthwhile. That comfort point or click point is going to be different for everyone. When I was unemployed in 2008, it was, I have tons of free time and no money, so everything matters. But if you're really busy and you don't need the money, just donate it. Also ask yourself, what's the worst thing that will happen if you get rid of something? I see so often, like part of the coaching work that I do with our clients is getting out of the just in case mentality. People like to keep things just in case. And the way I like to break that down is just in case what? So if you haven't used it and you can't think of a specific use for it, let it go. Because I have a saying, which is, don't let your past or possible future crowd out the present. And that's what happens with so many people, is they're keeping so much from a past life and so much aspirational clutter, which is a term I like to use. Like, I'm totally gonna, scan all my photos myself one day, and I bought all this equipment to do it, or I'm gonna scuba dive or whatever hobby, and then, it's just not happening, and that's okay. And we also live in a sharing economy now where you don't have to own everything that you need to use. So all of that is covered in that blog post, the Beyond Sparking Joy, how to decide what to keep or discard, if you want to recap later. So once you've created your plan, sorted and minimized, it's time to organize. So this is where, if needed, you make your trip to the Container Store. But I will tell you, 80% of the time, we don't need to do that. Unless aesthetics are really important to you, which I totally get that, obviously. Streamlining can be really nice. So this step is usually not that hard, because once you've minimized, you're not trying to fit a square peg through a round hole. There's a lot more space. It's simple. Things are already grouped from when you sorted. But basically with the office, when you're putting things away, look at the storage you have available, maximize vertical space. I have a saying that if you can see the back of a cabinet, you haven't maximized vertical space. If you have drawers, drawer dividers are life-changing. There's something from the Container Store we really like called Linus drawer dividers. They also come in bamboo if you don't like plastic or want to get away from that. But really try to repurpose what you have and make sure that system's going to work for you before you make an investment in organizing product. And especially if you have a more complex organizing system, or if you're not a minimalist, or you share the space with other people, labeling can be super helpful so that you just know immediately that's the writing implement container and I don't have to think twice about it. And then once you've gone through this process, it takes just 5 minutes a day at most to just clean things up and hit the reset button for the next day, which is wonderful. So now I'm going to talk about, but just to recap, the Minima method. Can everybody hear me okay at this point? Good? Awesome. I'm going to grab a sip of my water. Megan asks, any tip for digital minimizing, which I'm going to touch on a little bit. Side note, if you guys want to get away from single-use plastic water bottles, I love this thing. Lark. It uses a UV filter to purify. So just in case anyone's wondering what's up with that, I carry it around with me everywhere. So paper management, these notes that I'm going to talk about are actually here. Monica's going to share the link as well. So speaking to Megan's question, my entire office is digital and I don't have paperwork except what I'm actively using, and then that gets recycled or reused on the other side with my printer. This scanner is my favorite. It connects, they have a wireless version, but this one connects through a USB to my computer, and you just feed the paper through. It does duplex as well. This is the model number for anyone who's wondering. And it's around 100 to 120 depending on where you get it and what sale is going on, but this makes scanning fun. So what I do, once you've dealt with the backlog of scanning, and most things can be requested digitally now, so you don't even have to scan, is I have a little shelf in my cabinet that I showed you all where I have papers to scan, and I just do it once a week. So I'm not having to pull this out all the time. So with any information, what I found a lot is that even clients who are scanning are keeping more than they need to. So the 80-20 rule, I love the 80-20 rule, totally applies with paper. Basically, even the most organized person typically is only referencing 20% of the paperwork that they've kept. So what that means is we're all keeping way too much information. So I'm going to walk you all through some questions to ask to determine if you even need it before you take the time to scan it or file it. And this is all listed in the post that Monica just linked to. So first off, whenever you have a sheet of paper, so I've got this sheet of paper, and you know, a lot of people will just get analysis paralysis with paper. I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to put it over here, shove it in a drawer. You really only have 3 options. So you can act on it, you can toss it, or you can file it. And file can mean physically file into a file cabinet or file it digitally. So obviously discarding it, and that means recycling, shredding, trash, whatever. Discarding is the easiest option. So there's 3 questions. to ask if you can toss. So the first is there legal weight? I would say in most people's scenarios, 95% of the paper we encounter has no legal weight to it at all, unless you work in like a lawyer's office or maybe a doctor's office or something like that. So legal weight stuff for someone like me, or like just an average person, would be marriage license, birth certificate, social security card, anything relating to taxes, anything related to your business formation. So, and a lot of those things you can keep a scan copy and throw out the hard copy. Most things don't require an inked signature copy. Like things, like the only thing I've come across that does is my will. That's it. Everything else has been able to be scanned. And I even check with my lawyer and my CPA to confirm. So if you're not sure, check with your team, with your support staff. So if you can't just discard it, if you need to keep it, if you determine there's a use for, oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. Legal. The second is, can you find it again if you need it? So most things are online now, so usually yes. And the third is, what's the worst thing that'll happen if you throw it away? If you can't think of a time when you're going to need it again and you're going back to that just in case, you're wasting time storing something that you don't need. So it's best to just let go. And as you continue this practice and get comfortable with it, your instincts about what you actually need will definitely hone and strengthen. So it might be a little hard at first, but you'll get better at it. So if you can't simply discard, you have two options. You can act on it or you can file it. So for me, if I have any action papers, well, I have two places. I have like a sort of non-immediate action area, which is near my to scan, which is in the cabinet. I don't need to look at that every day. I need to just check in with it maybe once a week and just do a refresh. But if I have any urgent, like it needs to happen in the next few days, action, that sits on my desk. I personally don't have a fancy system. It's a pile, and that pile is so annoying to me as a minimalist that I'm like, I need to act. I need to get rid of this. I don't want to look at it anymore. So that for me is like incentive to act, because I just like to see things disappear. It's very rewarding. So if you do have a more complex system, like if you have kids' paperwork coming in for school, what I recommend for a more complex action system is just a simple desktop, like a clear acrylic, small box that holds file folders. So if you want to have something like that out, you can. So for filing, if you prefer a traditional like file cabinet, I have some tips to simplify. First thing, keep it simple. I remember when I was a kid, my dad had his own business and he had the most complicated filing system. And I remember I would help him out sometimes and I could never find anything because everything was like A, B, C, D. And there would be files that had nothing in it and it made no sense. So my advice is to not over organize your files. Less files with more in each is usually better than more different files with like two things, because if there's only two things, you're gonna have too many options, too many places to look, and you're just gonna struggle to find what you need. And then also some papers are gonna go into that really specific file and never get looked at again. Whereas if you're a little more broad and general, you're going to be touching those papers more as you're accessing them and just kind of naturally minimizing stuff you no longer need since you're coming into contact with it more often. Other things for traditional files, no manila folders. So I see a lot where people put the paper in the manila folder and then the manila folder goes inside of the hanging folder. What I've found is that the manila folder is redundant in like 90% of the time. There are some cases where you need that file to be able to like grab and go and be portable. That's the exception. But if that's not the case and those papers are just living in your home, it's best to just put the paper right inside the hanging folder. And then there's something, Monica, if you can link to it, Smeed Easy Slide tab. I always discard the tabs that come with the hanging files and order the Smeed Easy Slide tabs. I know some of my clients know who are on here today exactly what that is. But they're bigger and they're sturdier and they are super easy to snap into any hanging file so you can print a bit of a larger label. And I recommend putting those tabs on the front of the folder so that when you pull the tab, it opens the folder. So it's like a nice little engagement there that just makes sense, makes it easier to use. What else about that? Oh, pick a color you love. You don't have to go with the boring green hanging files. If you love red, do red. If you love purple, do purple. Then anything you can do to make paper more fun and less of a headache, do it. We even had a client who labeled her tax files "stay out of jail." I mean, if you want to just have fun with it, have fun with it, but just always keep it really simple. And now I'm going to take a few minutes to sell the benefits of going digital. But anytime a client tells me that they want to go digital, we organize paper first, because we are literally going to translate those file folders into computer folders and just name each piece of paper as it's scanned strategically. But for me, I've been completely digital for pretty much the entirety of my business, I want to say, so like at least 10 years. And it makes you super mobile. So if I travel, I can still access all my documents. If I need to share something with my team, I can easily share. I use Google Drive. I have some clients who like iCloud. There are other things out there as well. My CPA loves me, which I just like feel like such a teacher's pet, because I'm always sending my stuff on time because it's already in the cloud, and I just link right to it in an email, and he's like, "Great job," and I'm just like, oh. Yeah. So Chris O'Keefe is my CPA, if anyone knows him. He's great. And obviously, a huge benefit is that it takes up no space. I mean, and if you're stuck on space, or your family's all home now and you feel really crowded in your house, anything that you can simplify to clear out space is a bonus. It's also searchable, so it's like your own internet browser. So if you can't remember where you put something, you just search it. So last thing I'm going to talk about before we open up to Q&A is time management. I don't have a journal post about this yet. So one thing I didn't mention when I was talking about paper management, which is kind of key, is decide where you're going to manage it and be consistent. Very often when I meet with a new client for the initial consultation, paperwork is often a pain point, and I see that it's in multiple places throughout the house. It's maybe some old stuff is in their home office, but their home office isn't set up how they like, so they're in the kitchen. So there's a pile there, and then there's maybe a pile by the front door. And by setting up a functional home office, like what we're talking about today, you can be in your office, and that can be where you manage paper. There's a great app called Paper Karma, and I want to say it's free for up to a certain period of use. And what you do, I did this, and my junk mail is down to almost nothing now. So you just take a photo with your phone of the address, your address, and the sender's address, and unsubscribe. And somehow magically they take care of it, which is awesome. So that cuts off the mail right then and there. So, and this, what I'm talking about here, has been a lot of what I've been doing virtual sessions around. So getting your calendar organized, getting your email organized, getting your Google Drive together, because it's really easy to do screen share on Zoom. So just like with paperwork, as I was saying, with time management, it's really important to pick a system and stick with it. So again, I see a lot with clients where they have some in their Google or Apple Calendar, but then they have some in a written planner, and then they have some Post-it note reminders around, and it's really easy to miss something if you have things in multiple places. So I'm going to screen share again here. I took a screenshot of my Google Calendar last night. So this is this week. This is the Google Calendar app, and it's linked to your Gmail. So if you have a Gmail account, you have this. There are a lot of calendar apps out there, and this is what I'm going to talk about is doable, even if you don't have Google Calendar. But what I have here is scheduled tasks, scheduled events versus unscheduled tasks. So the dark gray is client work that I have to be present for this week. And you can see Gather Workshop is right here. The light gray is work that my team has to be present for, but I don't have to be for. So it's light gray. I know where they are, what they're doing, but I don't have to like have it in my face. And then the brown is personal. And these are each separate calendars in Google that I can toggle on and off as I want. And I can also share each separate calendar with different groups of people. So whenever we have a client job, like right here, I just am inviting the team so they know the address to show up, they know the client, it's super streamlined. And then up here is my to-do list. And having my to-do list in the same app as my calendar has been life-changing because I don't think Google used to have this capability. So this is my task list. And that's also a separate calendar in Google. And I group it by work, personal, home, and then I put an asterisk next to anything that's super urgent. So it shows up at the top. And a tip that I recently learned, which has also been game-changing, is to take a look at your to-do list. And how many of the tasks that you have listed have a time estimate next to them? I'm willing to bet none, or most of them don't, because mine didn't. And so what was happening was I was looking at my to-do list very subjectively and doing the things that I felt good about doing or that I knew would just be quick and feeling super overwhelmed by everything else. Like this task list looks really long, but by putting time estimates, I can see that each one says 10 minutes, 10 minutes. They're all 10 or 15 minutes. The longest one is 30 minutes. So I can look at that and say, that's less than 2 hours worth of tasks. I can do that. I don't feel stressed and overwhelmed because I'm looking at it objectively. And it also really helps you manage your time to start putting time estimates next to things. And then after you do the task, reflect back to see if you were correct or not. Because a lot of times people will think it's going to take longer and then it's actually really quick and you were procrastinating for days sometimes maybe, and it was so easy and fast and now it's off your plate. So let's see, another thing that I like to talk about, especially with business owners, but honestly, I think this is super helpful for anyone. I set aside Monday and Tuesday for my marketing and admin days to run the business. And most of the time, you can see I have an exception right here where I'm working with a client tomorrow morning virtually. But most of the time, I only schedule client time Wednesday through Friday, and then Alex runs sessions Monday through Thursday. So that allows me to take these days, I block them off. You can see the list is way longer for those days. I know if I'm working 6 hours with a client, I'm not going to get anything done when I get home, and that's okay. I'm going to be tired. So I block out that time as my business, marketing, and admin day, and I schedule around that so that, you know, if Friday comes and I know I've got a lot going on, I've got that time marked out to tackle at the beginning of the week. Another great thing about this is if I don't get a task done, this is a screenshot, so I can't show you live, but I can just drag this task to the next day, and it's as though it was never there. So there's not the guilty, like, let me rewrite this whole list for tomorrow because I didn't get anything done kind of thing. It's just like slide it on over. And I will say that I use this pad, which is from Russell and Hazel. I really like it. I got this from the Container Store. When I have a really busy day and I don't feel like opening up my Google actually, caveat, I keep my Google Calendar open 24 hours a day. So it's always open. My Gmail is always open. My Google Drive is always open. But if I'm rushing around, I just came out of the shower and thought of something I need to do, or I'm about to leave for a client and I don't have time to like properly enter it into the calendar, I write it here. And then what I do is if I didn't get it done, sometimes it's super easy, like put such and such in the mail, take out the trash. Like it never needs to make it onto my Google Calendar. It's more of like an ankle biting task. I just put it here. And then whatever doesn't make it get done super fast goes onto the Google Calendar for the next day. So another thing I always like to talk about with regard to time management is the concept of time boxing. So science has actually shown that multitasking is not real. So it's just basically your brain trying to do a lot of different things less efficiently. So stop doing that and start grouping like tasks. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I have like all my Minima tasks together. If I have phone calls, I put a C so they alphabetically populate and I can just batch my phone calls. So what I recommend is setting a timer for 20 minutes and all you're doing is responding to emails, or set a timer for 20 minutes and all you're doing is making phone calls, or 20 minutes and all you're doing is creative writing. And a lot of times that's what I will commit to. If there's a big project that I'm having trouble starting with, I'm like, well, 20 minutes isn't so scary. I'll do 20 minutes. And then by the time the timer goes off, I'm hooked. And if I'm able, I just keep going. So the other thing with time management is to tune into your natural circadian rhythm. I hope I pronounced that correctly. For me, my most productive hours are from 7 to 11 in the morning. And then I sometimes get a second wind around like 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. So that's when I schedule my hardest tasks if I'm not working with a client. So for me, the whole do the hard task at the beginning of the day rings true. If that's not your most productive time of the day, maybe don't try to do your hardest task then. So with that, I'm gonna end the screen share and open it up to Q&A. Monica, do you wanna lead that?
Yeah. Oh, I already got a couple of questions. Yeah, it is going to be recorded. Kristen, I don't know if you have a best way that you wanted to go ahead and like share the recordings for people.
Maybe are you able to share it through the email list of people who attended?
Yeah, I can totally do that. Maybe just put it up on our YouTube channel and I'll share it through a link.
Perfect, that would be great.
And then Jennifer asked, Google Task added to calendar. How do you do that?
So if you go open up Google Calendar, and any way to open up your Google Apps is, so it's all linked. There's a little 9-dot grid that you'll see at the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If you click on that, all of your linked Google Apps will come up if you're signed into your Gmail. So with tasks, that should automatically be an option to click on or off in the left-hand column of Google Calendar. And what I did to make it look like a natural list was I changed the hex color to white. So you can change the color of your calendars by, let me see, let me make sure I'm telling you all the right thing here. I would totally just screen share live and show you guys, but there's some confidential information and client names and stuff in here. So yeah, if you're in Google Calendar, hit the 3 horizontal lines at the upper left-hand corner to expand the options. And then tasks should be right there. And then in order to edit any of those calendars that you see, just hover over them and 3 vertical dots will appear. Click on those 3 dots, and those are your options. If you want to create a custom color, you just click the circle that has a plus at the very bottom of the options, and you can enter in any hex code color that you want. So white is FFF. So that's what I entered to get the list look. Like no background color for the tasks. Otherwise, they would each have a color bubble around them. All right.
And then Elizabetta asked, if we use Google Drive for digitized papers, where do you suggest we store videos and photos?
So that depends. If you have an Android device, I would use Google Photos. If you have an Apple device, I would store photos in iPhoto because that's, well, it's called Photo now. It's not called iPhoto anymore, but someone recently pointed that out. But yeah, just the native photo app in Apple, because that's where it automatically is stored anyway. And videos, same deal. But what I will say I do I like my Apple photos to be sort of my personal timeline when I scroll through. So any client before and afters, I actually upload to Google Drive into my work folder because it's work. It's not like a photo I want to scroll through and like reminisce.
Lisa asked, what do you recommend for resource reference material that you use frequently, like articles and textbooks?
Yeah, so I think just like with digitizing, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? And in some cases, if you have a lot of like books and stuff, you can't necessarily digitize that stuff. So just a bookshelf nearby in your office where you can easily access things would be great. And if you don't want to see it, you could do a cabinet with doors, kind of like what I showed. IKEA has a really amazing system that's been around since like the 80s called Billy Bookcase, and somehow they keep lowering the price, and it has the option to add doors. So that's a great like starter option if you just want something inexpensive.
Jennifer has, she uses Google Calendar for her personal appointments, and her job uses Outlook, and she wants to have one calendar, but it seems pretty complicated to get everything to sync. Did you have a suggestion for streamlining that process?
So you might be able to share. I had the same issue come up with a virtual client. And I do want to mention, if you feel like this is something you can't DIY, I do offer virtual sessions where we'd be one-on-one sharing the screen like this, and it's $100 for an hour. And that's usually where I recommend starting to create a complete like framework for this. And then you can DIY or do follow-ups. So I just wanted to mention that in case anyone's just like, oh, this is too much, but I want to do it. But with the client I worked with for that, we were not able to sync because of certain privacy settings for her work calendar. But I would ask your employer if you're able to share your share your Outlook calendar with your Google Calendar, because that may be a possibility. And then that would show up under the other calendars on that left-hand column that I described earlier. And you can toggle it on and off. But you may have to just have two separate calendars because some workplaces won't let you share it, unfortunately.
Looks like that's it. Did anyone else have any additional questions?
Oh, got a couple.
There we go. Any recommendations for kitchen spaces with multiple appliances and minimal counter space?
Mm-hmm. So first question, ask yourself, so my husband's actually an amazing cook, but he's also a minimalist. I don't cook at all. So I speak from his experience, and my employee, Alex, is also an amazing cook. And what they say about sort of appliances is when you have a small space, essentially ask yourself, is this large appliance worth the space that it's taking up? Like, are you using it all the time, or could you just use a knife or a hand tool? Otherwise, I would start by just seeing if there are opportunities to maximize your space in the kitchen, if there are other items you can declutter if you do need those, or you could look at adding a piece of furniture to maximize space if you can't do a full kitchen renovation. But a lot of times, if you've seen a lot of the newer kitchens, they have like a column of storage, and that's a really great place to put heavy appliances. It almost looks like a floor-to-ceiling cabinet inside the kitchen. But that's a sort of a specific question where I probably need more visuals to know the best advice.
Merritt was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about color as an organizing system.
Yeah. So do you mean like how to organize items that are more colorful, or using color to color code files, or what specifically?
And while we wait for them to answer, books, files to make the space more pleasing.
Okay, so I don't recommend color coding your books. I will say that, unless you have like one row of books, then go ahead. But if you have a legit library that you're referencing, organize them by category. And please don't turn the spines inward. Just get rid of the books if you're not reading them. But anyway, I hate that. It's not functional at all. But color, yeah, absolutely. So I did this whole Creative Mornings talk that you can find on my website about how every item that we select to bring into our homes is an opportunity for joy. So if you love a certain color or texture or shape, look for that in the stapler that you buy or in the pen that you use. I personally am obsessed with Japanese and Scandinavian design. So like, this is my one style of pen from Muji that I get refills for, and I love it. It's just hexagonal shaped. And you know, but if you're just obsessed with a certain color, then you can totally get all your pens in that color or whatever. Every functional object is an opportunity for design and cohesiveness in your space.
Barbara is wondering if you have a computer person who will work one-on-one, I guess, on organizing that a little bit more.
I actually do that. So we can see, yeah. I know tech stuff, I'm not an IT person, but I know more than enough to be very dangerous, as they say. And that's a lot of what I've been doing during COVID, like when we were all on lockdown and we weren't going into people's homes last summer. I was doing screen sharing and walking people through how to set up their Google Calendar and how to organize their Google Drive and how to name their files and how to set up all of that. So if that's something you're interested in, shoot me a message. I would love to talk about it. I actually have found that, so there's like several clients who I'm working with that consistently, and it's really funny because they're like, this is so much fun. This is amazing. And this feels so good. And I'm just like, you wouldn't think people would have that reaction from digital clutter, but they do. It feels as good as getting your physical stuff in order.
Awesome. Let's see. Lisa's wondering ideas for office spaces without a dedicated space. She lost her office space to her husband's work from home.
Yeah. So I would just carve out the most peaceful nook that you possibly can, something quiet. It definitely doesn't have to be in a window if you can't make that happen. But I would say, you know, away from like any loud, noisy activities in the house. And just keeping it simple. It could just be a matter of like your desk is somewhere and then your supplies are another place, maybe shared in your husband's office.
Toby wants to know, do you have a recommended web-based mail calendar versus a desktop app-based one?
Yeah, definitely Gmail.
Yeah, that's what we use.
Yeah, I've been a Gmail user for like 12 years. I don't know. I was not the first wave, but I was like close to it. And it's so user friendly, and they're always making, like, you can tell they're listening to their users. They're always making really awesome updates and streamlining, and they also back up your stuff. So if you were to accidentally get hacked, or I mean, it's super secure. I actually had a friend who had a government contract, and they did research and found that Google was one of the more secure options. But they back up your stuff for you, so you don't need an external hard drive, which is really liberating.
Waiting to see. Anyone else have any additional questions for Kristen?
Well, it was so nice to see so many familiar faces on here. I've missed all you guys who I haven't seen in person for a while. Oh, Lisa asked about password storage. So there are a lot of apps for that. I will tell you what I did. Okay, some people might disagree with this approach, but there are only a few accounts that I find need super security. My Google account, obviously, and my bank accounts. Everything else, I use the same password. If my Facebook gets hacked, I don't really care, but also like my password is really strong. So I change up those other three every so often as required, and the others are all the same, and it's, knock on wood, worked great. And then I have a password document in Google Drive. And my husband and I have an important docs folder shared. So I have all of his passwords in a table, and he has all of mine, all the login info if something were to happen. So that's what I do. But if you want something a little bit tighter, there's the 1Password app and a bunch of other things that are similar to that.
And then what are the Google services you use and the non-Google ones?
So the only non-Google thing I use is Photos. I'm a Mac user, but I don't use Pages or Numbers or any of the native apps. I use all of the Google Drive native, like Google Docs and Google Sheets and Google Presentations and all of that. I use Google Contacts. That's another thing I've been helping people is organize their contacts digitally and sync it with their phone and streamline it so that it's not half in Apple and half in Outlook and half in Gmail and just all a mess. The cool thing too is from that you can, in Google Contacts, you can make specific lists, friends, families, coworkers. And one thing that blew people's minds over the holidays is you can make one called Christmas List, because I know a lot of people send out a lot of holiday cards, and then you can just add people or subtract people to it as the year goes on, and then just export that list to print every year. And it's just so easy because you can have people grouped in multiple categories of your Google Contacts, and you can sync that with your iPhone or your Android. So yeah, I'm pretty much Google all the way except for Photos and actually having the Apple hardware. It's like, I wish that Apple and Google would have a child. Because I hate the Apple apps. I don't like iCloud, but I know how to help you use it if you do, so. Yeah, if you guys have any questions or if you want to work with me on this stuff, feel free to send me a message. Email is usually best, but I think, Monica, did you share my phone number too or no?
I haven't. I can grab it really quick.
Yeah, you can text or call me, but email is best. And we're also, if you're in Richmond, we are working in person with clients. If you want someone to come in and help you simplify your space, we're taking a lot of precautions and being super safe. So if you're comfortable with that, we'd love to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristen.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was really fun. Lots of great questions, and I appreciate everyone who attended.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting for everyone.
Yeah. All right, I'll talk to you all soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.